An oil crisis is looming in neighboring Cuba as the United States is threatening to impose tariffs on countries supplying the communist nation with oil. There are concerns that if the Trump administration follows through, this could lead to a humanitarian crisis. To put things into perspective for us, we're joined by Dr. Christopher Stokes. Hi, Doc. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Now, before we get to the oil issue, your thoughts about concerns about a possible U.S. invasion on Cuba?
Well, I'm not sure that we're at an invasion stage yet, but where we are is along the trajectory of the U.S. imposing its will in what it considers its backyard in Western Hemisphere more generally. And we saw what happened in Venezuela. We have seen the relationship with Canada, with Brazil, with Colombia, with Mexico on the strain as the U.S. seeks to exert its will on the different countries in the region. Cuba, of course, has been a stone in the U.S.'s shoe since the revolution 1959, 1960. I think with Marco Rubio, who is a child of that era of American involvement with Cuba, the sanctions and so on, as a Cuban American himself, living in South Florida, combined with Trump's proclivity to use U.S. force, not always military. In this case, it's economic, and he has used that very well, in particular tariffs, which he says is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Okay. In an attempt to really bring all the countries in the region to heel, so that they act according to the will of the United States of America. I believe that is what we are faced with, and Cuba is a natural next step, certainly after Venezuela.
Well, with that being said, though, Dr. Stokes, one of the questions being asked is, what's in it for the United States?
Well, this is confusing. So we know that President Trump is transactional. We get Venezuela; they have oil. The question of what's in it for the current administration, and I won't say a move to democracy, because the administration hasn't shown a great deal of passion for democracy. What they have shown a great deal of passion for are governments that are willing to do as they are instructed by the White House. Now, Cuba does have nickel, which is important to AI and electronics and so on and so forth, but it's not resource rich. So I really believe it's a push to the constituency of Southern Florida that is very close to Marco Rubio to bring about what is really a lifelong dream for many in that community. The Castros are past, but to have some sort of regime change in Cuba, the idea that they can go back to Cuba and retain their property and so on remains an attractive idea, which is frankly impractical. But I think that's where the energy is coming from. It's not a straight economic transaction.
And back to the oil issue now, Doc. What are the likely implications?
Well, Cuba has been in an energy crisis for a long time. It was, once the USSR collapsed, they continued to get some support from Russia, and then they got support from Chavez and then Maduro. That has been ongoing without oil, and now with really one of their longest allies, the country from which the Cuban Revolution was launched. Che Guevara and Fidel Castro left in a boat from Mexico to go to Cuba for their first landing. So there's a long history there. And without the oil from really anywhere, you can see very quickly that lives become miserable, economic collapses. And I think what they're trying to drive for is for the Cuban government to raise the white flag finally. But we will see. I do not believe it's going to, that the government is going to go quietly into the good night at all.
Okay. And just before I allow you to go, Doc, Cuba and CARICOM nations have for years enjoyed long-standing relationships. What should their response be?
Well, if you asked me that question 30 years ago, my answer would be different from tonight. I think we have a duty at a minimum to speak about respect for sovereignty, human rights, the condition of persons living in Cuba. We ought not to be bashful to speak about the extent to which Cuba has helped us. and seek at least some understanding on the humanitarian grounds. But we are in a scenario where if you seem to be pushing back at all against this administration, they will take steps against you. They'll stop issuing your visas. They'll issue travel warnings. They may, give you a little different tariff, which is inexplicable. So the region has to decide, have a gut check. What do we really believe? Our foreign minister spoke about pragmatism and principle. Okay. And unfortunately, in this case, the pragmatism of not being stomped on by the United States may overcome any principle that the country would wish to hold to. But frankly, it's a little bit of a sad day for us as proud people in the region who consider Cuba our brothers and sisters. And most important, I'll say this finally, if they can do this to Venezuela and can do this to Cuba, no one is safe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris Stokes, economist. Thank you so much, Doc.
Thank you very much.